If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash, and double honors to our venerable apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and peace and blessings to the Lord's elect, the house of David. All right, so Brother Aharon coming back at you with another lesson, Lord willing to be edifying and uplifting unto the elect. And the title is going to be The Inevitability of Gradualism. Okay, the inevitability of gradualism. All right, and this stems from some information I want to bring out in regards to this society called the Fabian Society. All right, now we got to understand that all these names that eventually become exposed, knowing that the nature of Esau, what he does is he to continue the deception, they just go about changing their names or their outward appearance, okay, so that they can continue with their wickedness, all right, behind closed doors, all right, even doing it openly, but because they might come off as, you know, sincere, all right, it puts people's guard down, okay. So today you have something known as the Fabian Society. Today they masquerade as the World Economic Forum. Okay, you have different parts of that, right? You got the IMF. Okay, even here domestically, looking at different things like the ADL. Okay, what's the other one? The Southern Poverty Law Center. Okay, and many different ones that, we can go down up and down the board, naming back and forth, right? But the point is, all these agencies, right, because they're all agents of one thing, all right, but all these agencies slash agents, all right, of this conspiracy, all right, they all carry the same agenda. Okay, whether this part is working for the demoralization of the people, another part is working for the subtle political mindset that people will have eventually, right, to go from one party to the next and so on and so forth, and to believe the BS that they hear during the campaigns, right? That's all done through deception, right? Another part is working in the medical field to help keep the people asleep and sick, right? Another part is working with the food to get people sick and never healthy, right? Another part is going into the science. Another part goes into the teachings that they give the children in schools, universities. All these different players and agents all play a role in order to bring about the so-called NWO. Okay, and like I said, they always masquerade with different names, all right, so that you can't trace them. Because if you look up the Fabian Society, yeah, they might be there today, but do they really operate? Because the information that the information on them and what their agenda is, we're gonna read right now, is being played out and carried out by different agencies that don't go necessarily by the name of the Fabian Society, right? Or the Bilderberg Group. Like, that was a thing years ago. Now you don't even hear about the Bilderberg Group like that. Yeah, they're still there, but they've infiltrated and masqueraded themselves into different names, like the World Economic Forum, like I said. Okay. And why do I highlight that so much? Is because the concept of the fourth industrial revolution, all right, the whole concept of you own nothing and you be happy, and human beings being nothing but workers slash cattle that are going to be implanted with a microchip. Okay, that's all philosophies, all right, pushed by these different satanic agencies, man. Okay, and they've all come together under the World Economic Forum banner. Okay, and they're pushing this full-fledged, full force. Okay, so it's our job to witness these things, highlight what's going on, and expose it. All right, however way the Spirit allows for brothers to bring it out, we just got to jump on it and bring it out. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, it says in 1884, the Fabian Society was founded in England with a secret aim to create a classless, socialistic society. Right? Isn't that the same sentiments being echoed by the World Economic Forum? Right? There'll be no class. You own nothing and you be happy. Everybody's going to be living off of a UBI, all right, universal basic income. Okay, and if you don't function, or if you don't go along with the requirements of your overlords, all right, then you're going to suffer the consequences with your social credit score reflecting, all right, those consequences, right? You have low social credit score. That means that you don't have access to society as others who might have, a high social credit score. Okay, and it's all a society that will be classless, right? There'll be no upper class, middle class, lower class. No, it's just workers. All right, being ruled over by a military of AI. All right, and the AI takes their orders from these so-called elites, man, who are gonna be underground somewhere in a bunker somewhere, living a beautiful life, so to speak. Right? But that's not gonna happen. So let's keep going. It says Lenin's Bolsheviks made their entry about this time as well, right? 1800, late 1800s. Okay. It says both groups had similar utopian basic aims, but employed different methods to achieve their goals. The Bolsheviks, now known as communists, seek to control the world through violent revolutionary means. Hence, you have the Bolshevik Revolution. Okay. And then later on, you had I think it was called the Red Dawn of China or something like that, right? By Mao Zedong, okay, and many different dictators that came after that. All right, you're seeing the modern day dictator, or soon to be Donald J. Trump. Okay, the cruel lord. All right, for to be a cruel lord, you'll be a dictator. All right, like real messed up type shit. All right, to be able to enact certain draconian measures and actually follow through with it, to have the guillotine, where you're not really committing a crime, but you become a criminal based on your refusal to bow the knee. Right, you're not going along with the plan. You're not, with the system, so to speak. You don't want to take the MOTB. They're gonna have to carry out death sentences, man. That's what it's gonna come down to. All right, that's why we're constantly warning that the comfortable times are gonna cease very soon, man. Okay, you see the signs. Store shelves are getting emptier by the day. They said by the summertime, if things go as they are, you're gonna see a lot of stores close down, just outright. Okay, and it's gonna affect mostly you Jakes. They say underserved communities. Yeah, they're talking about you. All right, especially if you don't have, all right, the covering of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah. You're done. You're done. All right, you're done. Okay. Shit. So it says the Fabians, however, teach that socialism can be achieved gradually through a series of reforms. Their theology is known as socialism. The Fabian Society was named by Quintus Fabius Maximus, a Roman general who avoided defeat by refusing to fight any decisive battles against Hannibal. Okay, go back to the I believe the Punic Wars. All right, with Hannibal, and he almost took them down, right? But it wasn't in the cards, right? It wasn't going to be according to prophecy. That's not how the Roman Empire goes down, which is the second leg that is in this time, right? They go down, all right, in this time, all right, and it's going to be by the hands of Jake, not Hannibal, but the Jake, and we're talking about Yahushai, the ultimate Jake, all right. So it says, thus the Fabian strategy is one of gradualism. Gradualism is a principle of seeking to achieve political changes or goals gradually. Okay, and what is their number one way of achieving these goals through gradualism? Something known as problem, reaction, solution. Okay, and that is a theme that it reoccurs all throughout America's history. To go from the start of 1776 to what's going to be 2026 next year, if we're still here, all right, you have 250 years of constant problem, reaction, solution through gradualism. But now we're at the point where they know that the time is short. All right, their window of opportunity is closing. So now you have gradualism, but it's accelerated gradualism through so-called AI. All right, that's the driving force that's kicked into the next gear in order for them to achieve their so-called New World Order. Okay, when you look at how they're bringing it, all right, it's literally all about control. Total control, man. All right, total control. A so-called dystopian society that we always see in these sci-fi movies is all coming out, man. It's all playing out in our faces. Okay, all part of the end. All right, it says one is reminded of the frog who is placed in a cool kettle of water on a stove, right? The boiling frog method, right? It says the frog has no fear. The water is gradually heated so slowly that the frog does not notice the temperature changes. He is then lulled into comfort of a false security until it is too late. And that's exactly what's happening to America right now. All right, the majority of the citizens, the Egyptians, all right, have no idea what the hell is going on. They sense that something is wrong, right? Because everyone can feel inflation and going to the store and buying things that everything is expensive now. They know that. They feel it. But see, a lot of them play this game of ignorance, right? If I don't know about it or the real reason why it's happening, then I wouldn't be as affected. And it's funny. I saw an article and they said, the article stated, people who are damn, well, how did it go? Something to the effect of people who believe in the supernatural world are more stressed than people who don't believe in the supernatural world. I was like, what a stupid article to come up with. People who believe in the supernatural are more stressed out than those who don't believe in the supernatural. Like, what does that even? What do you mean by that? Where are you going with that? Right? Where are you going with that? You see, but this is Esau. This again, part of Esau's plan. So now the whole concept of supernatural is basically going to the prophecies, right? It's going to be a supernatural thing to see the men of the Lord being transformed and changed, right? Going through the time of Jacob's trouble, and to be delivered from it, right? If you're of the elect, right? And ultimately to see America be destroyed, that's supernatural, right? Have we ever seen a whole entire a whole entire country as big as America be hit with fire like that? It's never happened in human history. It's kind of like the time of the flood, right? The first death, that was supernatural. The second death will be even more supernatural because you're going to have deliverance as part of it. Seeing brothers and sisters getting beamed up like that with a so-called UFO, a gigantic UFO that covers the whole entire skies. Right? Ezra said when he witnessed it, right, in his vision of that day, he said that it was so big that it covered the whole skies. It was like a mountain. He couldn't see the ends of it. That's how big it was. Right? That's supernatural. So people are starting to put two and two together, and they're starting to lean towards, what these men are saying is true. So now they're coming up with these articles to make it seem like if you are in the mindset of witnessing reality, then you're part of the people who believe in supernatural things. Therefore, you're more stressed out. So don't believe those things. Don't venture into stuff like that. Don't worry about stuff like that. Don't go read the book of Revelation and book of Second Ezra. Don't be going into these books. These are too hard to understand. You don't need all that. That's stressful. Go back to your sports. Go back to watching your movies and your performances on stage and musicians, and go back to that. See, we're distracting you from reality so we can continue with our shit, so you don't see it. That's all part of gradualism, all to the point until it's too late. Right? So you have gradualism, you have subversion tactics, all these different things. See, that's why we're seeing what we're seeing now. All these people and how they think, how they behave is very animalistic, very nonsensical, very zombie-like. See, that's the after effects of gradualism and subversion tactics, man. All right. So continuing, it says, we are guilty of being pawns in the game of gradualism. For example, take the price of gasoline. Undoubtedly, you can remember when a few years ago, gasoline sold for 39 cents a gallon or cheaper. Damn. When the price soared to 67 cents a gallon, you rushed to the gas station that was selling gas at 59 cents a gallon and thought you were getting a bargain. When it soared to over $1 a gallon, you thought 99 cents a gallon was cheap. Therefore, by gradualism, your yardstick for accepting what was and was not a bargain was warped. Actually, 99 cents a gallon is not cheap when you compare it to 39 cents a gallon. That's true. But see, that's what's happening now. Things are expensive. They don't go back down. They become the standard. The new high becomes the new low. It always happens. And then increasingly it gets higher and higher and higher until you have nothing else to give. And now the only thing you can give as a ransom is yourself. And that's where they're pushing everyone to. Okay? Things are going to get harder and harder and harder until you have nothing else to give to have some form of reprieve. And then at that point, they come in with their solution. Okay? So it says television. Actually, it says, but through gradualism, you have fallen into the trap of accepting higher prices and considering them as bargains. Television is the same way. In its infancy, television programming, right? TV, telling lies to your vision, programming. What are they programming? They're programming you, right? By broadcasting, casting spells broadly. Okay? I remember when we were younger, our father didn't allow us to watch TV. And only on certain occasions, like let's say like there's a huge news going on somewhere and everyone had to tune in or some shit, then of course the TV will be on and we'll all be there watching it. Maybe after elections, they count the votes and stuff like that. They're announcing it. He'll tune into stuff like that. But for the most part, TV was not a thing. Yeah, we had a TV, but ain't shit going on. You probably had local channels and that's about it. Right? And his whole mindset was, I want you boys to study and become scholars. Put the TV to the side. TV is nothing but a distraction. It's not going to do anything for you. We didn't understand that. Like, oh, why is this old man always on our case, man? Damn, like, you go to school, everybody's talking about what they were watching, and you just like, what are they talking about? I don't even know what they're saying. Everyone is talking about the new season of this, but you don't watch TV, so you don't know what the hell is going on. They make some of these references, and you're out of the loop because you don't know what the hell is going on. You don't be watching no shit like that. But that's what sets us apart from the world, because that's for Esau to channel his energy through vibrations and images and sounds and so on and so forth into the subconscious mind and program people. All right, people pick up these behaviors and you'd be like, why is it that Americans always act this way? Because they see it on the TV all the damn time. That's why. They hear it on the radio all the damn time. That's why. Because you go to a movie theater, you're gonna watch a movie of an American driving, and then he sees something happen and he gets so mad that he's willing to just crash the car, right? Destroy property, and then deal with the consequences like a spoiled kid. Like, this shit is crazy. Very irrational behavior. And then it transfers to the real world where people actually live like that. You see road rage incidents, you see all kinds of shit that's like so uncivilized. The behavior, like people just be smoking, like, it's bad for you. It could cause you lung cancer and all this, but they do it like it's a fashion thing. Like it's cool. See someone pull some shit and blow smoke in the air. Like, yeah, I smoke too. Like, it's just self-destructive behavior promoted as cool. That's America's culture for you. It's death. It's a culture of death, man. Especially when you look at the so-called black community, man, Jake be wilding with that shit. They pick up guns, they be doing all this extra shit. Yeah, I'm a this, I'm a that. Yeah, I'm gonna take a nigga out, da. Like, that's cool. Like, what is wrong with you people, man? And that's why the Lord's gonna wipe all these fools out, man. Cook all of them. Leave nothing behind. The scripture says what? We'll leave them neither root nor branch. Take them all out, man. All right? And they'll get back in their right mind when the kingdom is here. All right, we'll see you then. But for now, man, the Lord gonna have to wipe you niggas out, man. It's too much. All right? So going back to the reading, continuing, it says, television is the same way. In its infancy, television programming was clean and wholesome. Within a few short years, the sinister forces of Satan infiltrated. All right, and that's going into the J's. Okay, they are the physical counterpart of Satan on earth. So when it talks about Satan, of course, you're dealing with the spiritual demon Satan, but also his physical counterpart. All right, the only people on the earth that actually not only worship Satan outright, but their actions, their thoughts, their lifestyle, their way of doing things is all satanic. Okay, because that's their nature. They're wicked. All right. It says gradually, right? Gradually, a few curse words were allowed in their context, right? This paved the way for what is now considered by many X-rated television on all three major United States networks, right? And those are, I believe, ABC, CBS, and NBC, if I'm not mistaken, right? Those are three major networks, okay? And they're all controlled and owned by the Jays, okay? So when you have, damn near 100% of the media, or I say 97% of the media, all right, both through the printing press or, videos, news cycles, right? Whatever, anything, podcasts, all these different things, books. Okay, that goes into printing press with the newspapers and magazines and so on and so forth. The influence of information, all right, the control of information is done through these J's. So what you hear, what you see, through any major corporation of networking, of TV and all these different things, radio, all that is controlled by them. So they allow things, or they don't allow things. That's why they don't allow the truth, or they don't allow people to express any semblance of the truth on their major platforms. Why do you think they demonize people who speak against these corporations or try to bring light to who's actually in power behind the scenes? You notice everyone goes through some type of humiliation when they try to bring some awareness about who these Jays are and what they're really all about. All these guys in Hollywood, they're all afraid to speak up against it. Because not only can you lose your career, you can also lose your life. Because they made deals to get to where they're at. All right, you see what's going on with Shannon Sharp? All right, because he had to play ball with them Jays. Okay? You see how he spoke about Kyrie when Kyrie was when he retweeted, or he put a tweet about the from Hebrews to Negroes, I think. All right, and they made a public execution off of that brother, man. All right, but ultimately, that was because he was bringing awareness of what's going on, who you are as a people, and that's going to make you question who the hell are they, right? So they don't want that, so they punished him. Okay, they punished him real good, and then guess what? They made it clear as an example to everybody else who's in the league: if you ever push any type of boundaries like this is what's going to happen to you, or worse. You know what I'm saying? So now you don't hear that shit. You don't hear people like even Carmelo Anthony, same thing. He was on some podcast or some video or something. He was like, they talked about Hebrew Israelites. He said, yo, that's us. He said, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. He got excited and all that, you know? And then what happened? He got blackballed eventually. You know what I mean? So that's just how it is. People are very aware of what we're talking about. They know what's going on. These people, they all know, man. They watch our videos all the time. They know. You know? Because everything we say, they experience. They just can't say anything about it. You know, but if they could, they would. You know? How many times do the apostles always bring up examples of how some of these people who are revered in the world will come to where the school was at and come learn, ask questions? You know, because they were like, no, I need to go into the presence of the prophets because the prophets are back. Okay. And all these elites know. All right. Don't be mistaken. They know. And very soon they'll make their knowledge of us very apparent to the world. It will be demonized, but that's how you know that they know. All right. Because we're not on the same playing field. We're not for the same agendas, so to speak. Right. So they will demonize us. That's how you know that they know. Everything we're saying is true, man. Period. All right. So continue. It says, abortion followed the same pattern. Gradualism. It was not too long ago that abortion was illegal. Today, it is a way of life done millions of times each year by respected doctors or accredited hospitals, all through gradualism. Okay. It says, so it was the Fabian Society. It was that the Fabian Society realized the basic fault in man, that he was highly susceptible to invasion of new ideas via gradualism. Writers George Bernard Shaw and H.G. Wells and social reformers Sidney and Beatrice Webb were among early members of the Fabian Society. In England, Fabian leaders joined the Labour Party. They did not believe in class conflict, but were convinced that gradual measures would in due time bring about a socialist state. It did. The Fabians worked for a new world order. They did this by indoctrination of young scholars, right? And that's through these universities and colleges and frats and all this stupid shit. All right. It says in England, Fabian leaders joined the Labour Party. They did not believe in. Oh, we read that. It says these intellectual revolutionaries, they believed could gain power in the various policy-making agencies of the world and thus achieve the aims of the Fabian Society. Their tactics became known as the doctrine of inevitability of gradualism, and that's where I got my title from. Okay, the doctrine of the doctrine of inevitability of gradualism. All right, It says from ancient times, political philosophers knew that the most effective way to conquer a man is to capture his mind. That's you Jakes, man. You're a whole experiment. That's crazy. All right. So continue. It says the Fabian Society was a natural outgrowth of what John Ruskin had been promoting for years in England. John Ruskin taught at Oxford and he advocated a utopian type society. In one of his statements, he reveals his theory when he said, quote, "My continual aim has been to show the eternal superiority of some men to others, sometimes even of one man to all others." Okay? It says much of, and that's a New World Order mindset. That's an elitist supremacist mindset. Okay? Much of Ruskin's theories came from Plato, whom he worshipped. So they're into idolatry as well. All right, which is no surprise. Okay? It says there is a remarkable parallel in the writings of Ruskin, Marx, and others or other followers of Plato. Plato's ideal society included the following: 1. The elimination of marriage and the family. 2. All men would belong to all women. Crazy. 3. Children resulting from these promiscuous unions would be taken over by the government as soon as they were weaned. They would be raised anonymously by the state. Are we not seeing all these things happening now? 4. Women would be equal with men. No, they will actually surpass a man. All right, as is written. All right, that the Lord said He's going to. There's going to come a time, a strange thing is going to be done in the earth where a woman shall compass a man. Okay, meaning overtake a man. All right, on all levels except for, of course, intellect and strength. All right, and spirituality. Okay, it says women will be expected to fight wars with men and perform labor like men. And that's why the women are complaining now. See, it says selective breeding of men and women would take place under government control. That's why you have eugenics, you have abortions, and so on and so forth. Okay, children considered inferior or crippled in this breeding process would be destroyed. Right? You have something known as genomics. All right, look into that. They take aborted fetal cells. All right, so they abort the babies, or when babies are born and they look deformed, they take them and you ain't seen them no more. Or they could just pump them with drugs and all kinds of poisons that will lead to eventually the parent giving up. Like, yo, this child he's not going to make it, you know? And they take them, harvest some organs that might be all right, and they do whatever they got to do with it. That's what they do. Okay, that's what they do. It says Plato advocated a 3-level structure of society: the ruling class, the military class, the worker class. Isn't that what we're seeing now? Right? Isn't that what we're seeing now? And Trump is going to bring that all full circle. Okay? Because he believes in people who believed in the Plato doctrine. Okay, the Plato ideal society. He's one of them who think like that. Okay? That's why he's a prime candidate that these elites are using to bring this about. All right, at least here in Babylon the Great. Okay? So you have the ruling class, the elites. You have the military class, which is done through AI, the autonomous robots, the Skynets, and all that, right? And then you have the worker class, the people who are already micro-C-hipped and they're just working as required. Okay, slaves. All right. It says, now remember, Plato did not live in the 20th century. He was a Greek philosopher who lived at the beginning of the 4th century BC. Yet what he describes as the ideal society is on the verge of being fulfilled today, otherwise known as the New World Order. Plato's philosophy was patterned, in part, from Pythagoras, a philosopher of the 6th century BC. The school of Pythagoras was a communistic aristocracy, men and women pooling their goods, educated together and offering themselves as guardian rulers of the state. And ultimately, that's what you see in these colleges and universities, especially the frats. Okay, you have the fraternities, and then you have the one for the girls, sororities. Okay, and that's how they get them. All right, that's why they're all based with they call it Greek life. All right, this is what it goes back to. All right, Pythagoras and all of them. Okay, communistic aristocracy. That's where Greek life comes from. Okay, it says, why all this ancient history? By studying the origins of satanic influences, one can trace the continuous line of people or groups or world rulers who knowingly become pawns in a conspiracy of power. All right, and let's get that in one of, if not my favorite precept, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. You know where I'm going. Start from verse 3. It says, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed. So like in 1 second. All right. So continuing, it says that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, and that's Esau, Edom. All this stuff that we're bringing out is all going into them being revealed, right? Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God. Okay. So going back to the point that they practice Satanism and use satanic influences, all right, on groups and world leaders to bring about these conspiracies, okay, these agendas. Like Klaus Schwab said, they penetrate the cabinets, right? They have young global leaders, okay? So continue, verse 5 says, remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things, and now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time, and that time is now. Okay, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Mystery going into what? Secret societies. Okay, they've had it back then, and they've been pushing it all the way till now. All right. The mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And the Heavenly Father is the one who's letting him, all right, be taken out of the way by way of the truth. Okay, all his secrecy, everything is being revealed. We're in the time of the revelation. All right, the unveiling of the secrets, exposing of these devils. All right. So continue, it says what? And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Aha. Okay, so that's all happening now by way of the prophets, starting with our elders and apostles of Great Millstone on down. That's where you're going to find the real truth. You got the truth and you got the real truth, the truth. Okay, the whole truth. Okay, not 99%, 100% truth. Okay, and we believe that through faith. All right, which is a gift from Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, only for the elect. All right. So continuing, it says, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. All right, so verse 9 is a real good highlight, right? Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. So they come in the energy, all right, the spirit of spiritual demon Satan. That's why we say that they are the physical counterpart of Satan. Okay, on earth, if any race of people were to be Satan on earth, the devil, if we're going to play a role, it'll be them. All right, and it's not even close. Followed by wicked ass jigs, but it'll be them. All right. So continue the reading. We're going to close it out. All right. It says here, John Ruskin could be considered the Plato of his day. Right? He might be. He might be him coming back. Right. Reincarnation. It says one of Ruskin's students was Cecil Rhodes. Rhodes became a firm believer in the Ruskin theology. With financial support from Lord Rothschild, Cecil Rhodes was able to monopolize the diamond mines of South Africa. Rhodes became a millionaire. Much of his money went to start the Rhodes Scholarships at Oxford. It was his desire to unite the world under a central government. And on February 5th, 1891, Cecil Rhodes formed a secret society. These men could not be considered evil geniuses, as some mentioned in this book. These rather were men who thought that world peace and harmony could be brought into being by their creating world organizations for good. Some, however, had other uses for these world leagues. Many of the members of this secret society were devoted disciples of John Ruskin. In this secret society, Rhodes was the leader. Among those who were to be included in the circle of initiates was Arthur, Lord Balfour, and Lord Rothschild. Ain't that some shit, right? The Balfour Declaration and all that, right? It says, there was to be also an outer circle known as the Association of Helpers. This was later called the Round Table Organization. See? This secret society gradually extended into other countries and in 1910 began publication of a quarterly magazine known as the Round Table. Among their chief supporters were members of the Astor family, right? I think his name was it Jacob Astor? Or no, it might be. He actually died during the time of the what they call the sinking of the Titanic, right? Which was really the Olympic, if you really go into it. But for historical knowledge basis, it's the sinking of the Titanic. He was actually on there, and he was one of them who were opposing the Rothschild-owned federal bank system, otherwise known as the Federal Reserve here in America. Okay, he was against that, and for of course, for political and / personal reasons, because these are all rich people. Why would one rich motherfucker accept the other rich guy to be the one to establish all things that we all got to deal with? Nah, I want it to be my way too. So it's like a battle of power, so to speak, and he lost out on that. Okay, is that the desire was to have the capital of this World Federation in the United States. In institutes of international affairs were established worldwide, including the United States, where it is known as the Council on Foreign Relations. Okay, another deceptive title of one of Esau's agencies. Okay, to push this New World Order agenda. All right, but let's look up this guy, Astor. Was it Jacob Astor? Titanic. Yeah, Jacob Astor. Right. It says here. Let me read a little bit about him, because I just want to see if I could refresh my memory here. Jacob Astor IV was an American business magnate, real estate developer, investor, writer, lieutenant colonel in the Spanish-American War, and a prominent member of the Astor family. He was among the most prominent American passengers aboard RMS Titanic and perished along with 1,510 others when the ship sank on her maiden voyage. Astor was the richest passenger aboard the Titanic and was thought to be among the richest people in the world at that time, with a net worth of roughly $87 million. This was back then, equivalent to $2.83 billion in 2024 when he died. Now that's chump change right now. For these, with the Rothschilds, we're talking 500 trillion in gold, and that was years ago. That number was years ago. So imagine now, with all this consolidation of power and resources, it could be crazier right now. Who knows? Okay, but yeah, he was against. I guess let me see something. They might call it a conspiracy theory. Jacob Astor, Federal Reserve. So they say here, see, call it conspiracy. Let me see. Nah, it's going to something else. All right. Anyway, the point has been made. We're gonna leave it as is, and see if I could just get this one last precept here, and then we're gonna close it out. All right. This is the book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 11, and verse 14. It says, "And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light." All right. And the point is, you got all these different secret societies that are, well, not so secret anymore. They operate out in daylight, but they call themselves with names that are much more acceptable, all right, to the public. All right, though they operate in secret or in secrecy, they do it openly as well. All right, covertly and overtly, they do it all openly. All right, but in order to do that, they have to masquerade as something good. All right, that's why the World Economic Forum will say something like, "You own nothing and you be happy," and have a man smiling right in your face. Like, what we supposed to be having that same reaction, nigga? Like, we owe nothing, we happy? Like, who the fuck? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how they do, you know? And they infiltrate governments and so on and so forth, and they pitch this, we're here to save lives. Meanwhile, they're here to kill you. They're choking you out, saying, let me save your life. Let me save your life. Stop resisting. Let me save your life, man. Stop fighting this lifesaver, man. And they're choking you out. That's Esau for you. All right? They say they're gonna take over either by consent or by conquest. All right? But everything is being exposed in these last days. All right, and they're gonna get their just due very soon. All right, finishing off 2 Corinthians 11 and 15, it says, therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness. Right? Again, they masquerade, they change names. All right. Now Yahoo could come up here, whose name is Malakovich or something like that. Malakovsky. I think that's his last name. Right? His real name is Malakovsky, but he could come around here and say Netanyahu, right? And come up and say, we're doing this for our people, the people of God, the people of Israel, the covenant, da-da-da-da. Meanwhile, he's going around destroying people and families and nations and homes. Crazy, right? Whose end shall be according to their works, all right? So they're going to get their just due, okay? They're going to get their just due, man. When we slap their asses with chains and we bound their kings with fetters of iron, as is written, okay? So anyway, I'm going to leave it off there. Lord willing, you were edified and informed. In closing, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash, the water Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, and until next time, Shalom.